guys, and welcome into a brand new installment of the Career Competitor Podcast with me, Steve Meller. And as always, we're brought to you by the friendly folks over at CG Sports Network. And we are the show that seeks to light the competitive fire within you in order to jumpstart or optimize your career. Now, I am just beyond excited to be welcoming on a story that is Johnny Quinn. Now, Johnny was born into the football world that is the state of Texas. And despite having these massive, massive dreams of pursuing a career within professional football, he had those dreams taken away from him and had to pivot, had to change, had to find new ways to really excel and really drive his competitive energy into something different. And lo and behold, the sport of bobsleigh came along, and you're going to hear all about Johnny's incredible story here within this particular episode. So much incredible content to take away from this, and I'll certainly summarize and highlight one or two of those key things at the conclusion of the episode. But please listen out for Johnny's willingness to almost embrace the opportunity to go through adversity. It's almost as if every time adversity was presented to Johnny, he was able to look at the situation, keep his mind open, and just take advantage of the options that were presented to him. He never closed doors to the potential for something different that would allow him to maybe pursue excellence, find success in ways that maybe he never intended to when he first started out. So just a fantastic interview, incredible discussion, and I'm just excited to bring you guys along for the ride here with Johnny Quinn, and I hope you all enjoy. Hey guys, before we jump into this particular episode, I encourage you to go to careercompetitor.com where you can conveniently find all of my episodes provided there. You can also connect with me through the website as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this particular episode and just hear from you in general. Maybe you or someone you know would be a great candidate to come on the show as well. In the meantime, whatever podcasting platform you're listening to is on, make sure you're subscribed to the show, following us, and, of course, leaving us a rating as well. This is paramount, especially if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts. Take the time just to click the 5th star. I would love a 5-star rating if you don't mind. And it really helps us continue to expand the show. So please take the time to do that. And, of course, give us a follow on Instagram, career_competitor. Okay, well, I am beyond excited, honestly, to be bringing on Johnny Quinn to the Career Competitor Podcast. Johnny, first and foremost, how are you today, brother?
I'm doing great. Steve, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and you have a story to tell, and for our listeners, they know by this point we are a storytelling podcast, and as much as we want to bring out so many of these fantastic examples and characteristics that you provide when it comes to just being an incredible competitor across so many different areas as we're about to learn, let's just start right in terms of where your wheelhouse is. I know you tell your story a lot, so let's hear that story. I'd love just to fill our listeners in on exactly who we're talking to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So you grew up in Texas, and in Texas, you play football. That's what you do if you're involved in sports. And so made my journey through Texas high school football, went to the University of North Texas on a football scholarship, but also walked onto the track and field team because I knew I needed to get faster if I wanted to play in the NFL. Had a wonderful career at UNT. We went to 3 bowl games. We won 3 conference championships, and I left as the school's all-time leading receiver. Entered the NFL in 2007. I was an undrafted free agent with the Buffalo Bills. Got cut. Went to the Green Bay Packers in 2008. Got cut again. And then I went to the Canadian Football League, spent a year there with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Steve, blew out my knee and got cut a 3rd time, right? And I'm sure we'll kind of unpack what that's like and how do you battle that. And so I, at that point, I'm 3 cuts in, I've got a blown out knee, and my agent's like, "Hey, Johnny, you look like damaged goods on paper," right? I'm beat up.
Right.
And so the door of football closed. And Steve, that was tough because it's a sport I grew up playing. I was good at it, right? And then now nobody wants me. And that was tough to process. And what was interesting is I still knew I had something left in the tank. And some things started to line up. My mom, one of her coworkers was a bobsledder back in the day. And then my agent at the time He represented a bobsledder back in the day. And, as you and I know, and all our listeners, the sports background knows, there's no NCAA level bobsledding, right?
100%.
You can't go to college for bobsledding. So they recruit from football, and they recruit from all sports, but
Sure.
football and track and field, you kind of have that build as an athlete. And so doing both in college, I kind of fit that mold. And I remember I'm talking to my agent. He goes, Johnny, there's been 2 people ever to play in the NFL and compete in the Winter Olympics. First guy to do it was a guy by the name of Herschel Walker. And so I'm thinking, if Herschel did it, how do you do this? Sign me up. And so, it's an unbelievable story. I'm having this conversation with this driver at the Olympic Training Center. He's saying, hey, why don't you come out here in a couple months, push a bobsled around, right? See if you like it. And I said, look, I'll come out, but if my agent finds a football team, Steve, I'm out of here, right? I'm not going. Right. I'm going back to football.
Right.
True story. 1 month before team trials, or before I was supposed to go get this up, and try out bobsled, I get a phone call from this driver, and they moved everything up, a month. And he goes, Johnny, would you consider coming up now and competing in the U.S. 4-man team trials? And I'm like, well, when's the race?
Right.
He goes, it's in 2 days. I said, 2 days? You got to be kidding me. I live in Texas. We don't get any snow, right? I play football.
Right.
And he goes, Johnny, all you have to do is get inside the sled. And so, Steve, true story. My first time ever on ice was at the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid, New York, at the U.S. 4-man team trials, and we took 3rd place.
Wow.
Right. It was unbelievable, unreal. And so that started my bobsledding journey and career in 2010. And in 2014, I became a United States Olympian, had a chance to wear the red, white, and blue and represent Team USA on the world's greatest stage athletically. And it was just remarkable, Steve, remarkable to, have my first career really be a train wreck. Right. Here I am, 26 years old, 3 cuts. I lost $2.6 million in NFL contracts, a blown out knee. And at age 30, when in the world of pro sports, right, they start to call, 30 old.
Right.
To become a United States Olympian, to walk in opening ceremonies. Right. It was just, it was unbelievable. Steve, it was unbelievable. So, so I'm a Texas football player turned Olympic bobsledder. There's not many of those floating around.
You're one of a kind, man. You're one of a kind. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And so much to unpack there. And the something you said there towards the end of having your initial career just pretty much torn to shreds, and then in a moment where you had so little time to really think, to overanalyze anything, you suddenly committed to something that you were uneducated on, inexperienced at. Yeah. But there's something inside of you at that moment that's telling you that this is the right thing. What is that thing? What is that voice? Where did that message come from within you that said this is the right thing for me to do in this moment?
Yeah. I think there's 2 parts to that question, Steve. What was interesting is, after my first cut, here's what I needed to find out to be true. And I think all of us struggle with this. When something you're good at gets taken away, not on your terms, right? There's this gasping. There's this, this feeling of things being unfair. There's disappointment, right? There's anxiety, there's worry, there's depression, there's all these things that add up. And so, Steve, I was on this journey to figure out, okay, I've had this massive failure in my career, right? I'm 20, fresh out of college sports. Football's now been taken away. I've lost this 3-year deal that I signed with the Bills. Here's what I needed to find out, Steve. I needed to know, are there other men and women who are further down the road of life than I am at this point? Have they overcome massive failure before, right? Because this is a massive failure to me.
Sure.
We all classify success and failure differently. So for me, this is a huge failure. My career done.
Absolutely.
And at this point, here's what happened. I became an avid reader. an avid reader. I started reading autobiographies. I started reading books on men and women who historical figures who have done amazing things with their life. And Steve, here's what I found out. This is unbelievable. What I started to realize is that these men and women who have done wonderful things with their career, their profession, the relationships that they have in family, in the community, whatever, they failed before.
Yeah.
They've had these massive setbacks. And so it was kind of, as much as I hated getting cut and I missed those contracts, it was kind of this I got re-energized. When I started to understand, wait a second, you have to go through these setbacks in life to springboard you to future success. And the more I started consuming that content and learning about men and women who've done this before, I actually kind of realized, Steve, I was on the path to accomplishing something big. Because I'm going to not sulk in my disappointments or failures.
Right.
I'll mourn with it, but I'm going to learn from it.
Right.
And so when bobsledding came up, so that's part one, I became an avid reader. One, I needed to know, can you recover from a failure? And the epiphany was, not only can you recover, Steve, it's actually kind of a prerequisite. That's the path, right?
Yeah,
so as weird as this sounds, I kind of realized I was on the right path, as much as I wanted my NFL career to go differently. So that's the first part. Became an avid reader, understood I was on the right path. The second part is when bobsledding came up, you're right. Unknown, right? How do you even do it? Are your arms out here? There's nothing here.
Right.
But here's what I knew. Ultra performers, men and women in sport and business, it doesn't matter. Here's what they do. They take action, right? They gather as much information as they possibly can, and they make a wise decision. And so as I was gathering my information, understanding that there is no more football, it's over. Understanding that there is an opportunity. It's unique, but it's on my doorstep. And I talk about this in a lot of my keynotes is, are you available for an unexpected opportunity, right? If you told me growing up in Texas that one day I'd be a bobsledder for the United States of America, Steve, I'd say you're crazy, right?
Right.
But here it is. And this is a fundamental element that ultra performers consider and walk through, is that when an unexpected opportunity presents itself, are you ready? Or are you available? Or here's the flip side of the coin. Are you under the mindset of, well, this is the way things always are, everybody that I do life with doesn't do anything different. First one didn't work out. I guess just didn't work out.
Sure.
No, are you available for pursuing an unexpected opportunity? And if you answer yes to that, Steve, what happens? It sets in motion new dreams, new goals, new directions. And looking back now, as I look back on my football career, my Olympic career, I can see it clearly looking back.
Right.
When you're in it, I call it the messy middle. There's confusion, there's uncertainty, there's a little bit of embarrassment. There's,
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. But a foundational truth is you've got to take action.
Yeah.
You have to take action.
Yeah. I love the being available for the unexpected opportunity.
Yes.
I'm writing that down, and I'm probably going to write it a few more times.
Yeah.
Because for me, this is something that we've definitely discussed on this show before. But I think the presence of mind to know, again, what you just added on there, to know when to actually act.
Yeah.
It's great admitting and being accepting to the more unexpected opportunity. But then the next step is actually taking action.
Yeah.
And that's the in so many versions of life. And here we are. We've already referenced your experience being so unique, so one of a kind. I think so many of these 1 or 2% examples, and you're certainly probably even less than 1% in terms of what you've become. There had to be this moment where you were willing to take action, and so few probably were not. Because has it ever made you wonder that maybe this opportunity has been there for other people before you? I mean,
Sure.
have you ever started to think that way? Because I can only assume that it must have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And so Steve, you're unpacking something beautifully here in that, okay, if these unexpected opportunities have been in front of people before and they haven't walked through it or I guess accepted the challenge, right? Whatever we want to call it.
Right.
I think the question we need to ask is why? What were they, one, not aware? Were they two, good at being an information gatherer, but then got in that paralysis by analysis and just couldn't make an action step? Or, number three, they just, I don't know, they pursued something different. So I think you can, people who've missed it, whatever you want to call it, I think that you can fall in those categories. But here's the good news is that, look, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
Right.
Is today. Right. So maybe some opportunities have slipped.
Yeah.
At the recording of this podcast, I wish I would have bought some Bitcoin in 2010.
Right.
I wish I would have bought, Amazon stock in 1996.
Sure.
So we can play this game. It's a little bit of a waste of time thinking about the opportunities you missed. What I would challenge our listeners to say, okay, is, am I open to considering unexpected opportunities now? Right, Steve? And I couldn't think with what happened last year with the quarantine and the effects that have carried into 2021. And, businesses have been shut down. People's lives have been destroyed. Steve, I couldn't think of a better time to process information and say, okay, things are different. Am I available for finding out or pursuing what's possible, right? What's new? Yeah. Where can I use my skill set and move that forward?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I immediately reflect on my last 12 months, and I'm a swim coach. So when the world gets shut down and you can't go to a pool, there's not a lot of use for me.
Yeah.
And I say that knowing that I'm very fortunate to be part of an institution that was able to support me through that. But at the same time, what was I ready for? What was I willing to maybe take on? And this podcast, even though it's 3 years old, the past year, all of that usual external energy that I get to put into my life as a swim coach, well, I redirected it. I redirected it into this, and it's led me to producing so many more episodes and so much more content and having conversations like this. So for me, I say, well, yes, we've gone through some difficult times recently, but here you are as someone who's your main generation of income today is doing what we're doing right here, is motivating people, is communicating with people, and your willingness to still be available over the last 12 months, even if it is in a format where we're looking into a screen.
Right.
That doesn't change the fact that you're ready to be available, that you're willing to take opportunities. So for me, this is hitting me on every single level that I anticipated that it would. And everything about our show, obviously, we're always coming back to the competitor. And what I love about everything you're presenting here so far, Johnny, is that these are all components that can add to a competitor's journey. This isn't we're not necessarily describing you, the competitor. We're describing these many, many attributes and these many, many processes, let's say, that have allowed you to remain competitive and obviously compete to an Olympic standard.
Right.
But let's make it about the competitor now. Who is Johnny the competitor? What maybe drove you in that time once you became a bobsledder, but also what drives you today? What keeps you so hungry today?
Yeah, Steve, great question. What's interesting is I think all our listeners, us, being in sports, is people who are involved in sports understand goal setting, right? Sure. We're going to win the national championship. We're going to, we're going to win the meet. We're going to win the race. We're going to win the game. We're going to accomplish these milestones in the weight room or whatever. We are goal setting people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And when I was in college, it's to go undefeated. It's, I want to set all the weight room records. When I got to the NFL, I want to become a starter. When I got to the Olympics, I want to win a gold medal. Those are the goals, right? And so you see them, you work towards that, and that keeps you, when you've got a goal like that, it keeps you hungry, motivated, especially on the days when you don't feel like it, right? Because feelings are fleeting. So what's interesting is now that I'm outside of sport, and I'm in business, right? I'm a full-time keynote speaker. I also own a insurance business in Texas, a property and casualty business.
Mm-hmm.
Is I'm still goal setting, but I goal set in longer terms. Let me unpack this. In college, I'm only there for 4 years. So I've got a 4-year goal, right? I want to leave as the school's all-time receiver. I want to win all these conference championships. But that's a 4-year goal. Getting ready for the Olympics. The Olympics happen once every 4 years. So I've got these goals. In business, I have short-term goals, but I'm looking 10, 20, 30 years down the road in business and in my relationships. Now watch this, Steve. So if I'm a younger business professional, which I am, and I have a 20-year goal. So I own 2 businesses. I'm married and I have a 2.5-year-old little girl. In 20 years from now, I want to own 4 to 5 businesses. Right. I want to, the largest group that I've spoken to date was January of last year, right before COVID hit. I spoke to 5,000 people at Lockheed Martin. Wow. In 20 years from now, I want to speak to 25,000 people in one setting. Right. So I've got these audacious, massive goals. Sure. But relationally, well, let me unpack this for you. In 20 years from now, I'm 7 years into a marriage. We'll be 27 years into a marriage. My wife's name's Amanda. So when I come home 20 years from now and I hit that button in my car for the garage door to go up, do I want my wife to say, Johnny's home, or Johnny's home? Right?
Yeah.
My daughter, she's 2.5 years old. In 20 years, she's going to be 22. I want to have a thriving relationship with my daughter in 20 years from now. Not to where, she hates me. Now I'm not going to be her best friend. I'm going to be a loving dad. So think about this. I've got these long-term goals on what I want to accomplish business, relationally, in other areas of my life. And what this does, Steve, is it helps me align my daily actions today.
Love
right? It helps me understand where my efforts are going today. So that when I don't get a lot of sleep because my 2-year-old is up, or things are going on in the business that are frustrating and tough, I'm not immutable to failure and adversity and obstacles, but I've got a long-term goal.
Sure.
And so I can line my daily actions up. And so that's Steve, that is the sports processes that we've all been, all our listeners, everybody's been built into, that we're going to win a national championship. We're going to accomplish this. What that looks like in real life. And I would encourage our listeners, if you haven't goal set, maybe the last time you goal set was when you were part of a sports team.
Sure.
I'd encourage you to do that in your career and also relationally.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Okay. And again, your interview number 82, 83, something like that, in terms of how long I've been doing this show. And there's been a handful of moments before these interviews where I knew going into it there was going to be so many connections in terms of the way in which I approach things and the way in which you approach things. And I'm happy to say that I was right in that. That's been confirmed, because 10 years ago, I'm 35, 10 years ago, when I was coming off my time as an athlete, I think I went into collegiate coaching because I just wanted to keep fighting, keep competing, live for the moment, live for the day, live for the season as well. That was about as long-term as it got for me, the next 6 months. And then suddenly I got to the age of 30 and I looked at myself in the mirror and said, you cannot keep this up. You cannot keep this up, because all it's waiting for you is these 5-minute moments of absolute celebration, and then these hours and hours and hours of just over analysis. Sometimes it goes down to a negative pathway and all this sort of stuff. Right. Relationships and long-term goals have to become more of a day-to-day part of your being. And as it happened, I already loved making relationships. So by prioritizing that, it became something that brought about a newer version and more updated version, let's say, of myself, that introduced me to my wife, that introduced me to the life I now have with 2 children under the age of 2. So I've got
beautiful.
I've got you beat there by one.
Yeah, you do. I love it.
Absolutely. So for me, my day-to-day competitiveness comes from prioritizing these relationships like you're talking about. And for me, that's the beauty in competition. That's the beauty in the day-to-day. And when we can actually realize that and feel that, then we don't press the snooze button 3 times in the morning. We just hop right out of bed. And those little tiny things, they really do start to become more consistent in your day-to-day, because I love how you put that. Like, you come home and it's not, oh, Johnny's here. It's Johnny's
home. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Those little things.
That's beautiful. That's just so beautiful.
There's a quote that there's a guy out of Oregon. His name's Dale Partridge, and this quote just, Steve, it knocked me down when I read it. And it goes like this. It goes, "Success at work without success at home isn't really success at all." And Steve, going through the Olympic Training Center and that movement, I've been through every personality finder test, right? I've done a disc profile, strength finders. I mean, you name it. Look, I'm a type A extrovert. I get fired up. You can probably tell on the call, like I'm engaged. I'm an extrovert. I love to be around people. Setting goals and going after them. I'm very good at putting blinders on. And, hey, we're going to accomplish this. But if you destroy the things that are most important, did you really win?
Right.
And so what it did, it just gave me a healthy perspective in that, you know what, I can thrive in both areas. I can thrive relationally and in a career, but I have to prioritize my time. I have to make sure I'm taking the right action steps. Right.
And that's also introduced me, and it's clearly the case with you, to being comfortable with being busy as well. Because if you're always conscientious of the relationships, then there is no day that can be too busy where you feel like you've potentially disregarded these important relationships within your life. You can have all of this on your plate and still put your head down at the end of the day and say, I love my wife, I spent time with my kids, etc., etc. These sort of things were still paramount in terms of what I was doing. And it does lead to a healthier version of you, the competitor, which is just is fantastic. And a lot of the time I'll ask you, I'll ask my guests what's the future look like? What does everything? You obviously alluded to that a little bit. So one question that's just come to mind while we're talking here, Johnny, is what do you consider to be a win? Like, how do you define winning, even if it's just on a day-to-day basis right now?
Yeah. So, there's 3 things I look at as a value-driven professional. And we've got to do these 3 things. And if I'm doing them daily, then I'm winning in business, then I'm winning in life. Is number 1, we have to make money. And that might, we can unpack that a little bit, and I hope our listeners will understand my heart here. That is not from a sense of greed or accumulation. It's understanding that money is amoral. Money has no feelings whatsoever. Steve, if I had $100 bill, I can use that $100 bill and spend it and use it on something that's good and healthy, or I can use that same $100 bill and spending on something that's bad and destructive. And so, to our listeners, I think, all of us, we've grown up with maybe money is so important to just how we live and operate our life, is that I think a lot of times there's a misunderstanding on what money can do. And what I found is there's only 3 things you can do with money. We should really do all 3. And the men and women that I've studied who are just thriving in business relationally is they do these 3 things. They give money, they save money, and they spend money. And so how I know I'm winning is, do I have a proper understanding and control of money? So as a business professional, we have to make money. Second thing and third thing that kind of go together is, am I reducing frustration and am I solving problems? So am I making money? Am I reducing frustration? Am I solving problems? What that does, it kind of gives me a treasure map on the actions I'm taking, because in any client-centric business, to our listeners here that are out of sport now and in your career, don't your clients want less problems? Don't you? Right?
Yeah.
Don't your clients want you to solve problems? Yeah, yes. and so do you. So those are the three things, kind of my diagnostics that I check in on. And and I got that concept from a guy by the name of Donald Miller, but it's three things of being a value-driven professional. And that's how I know if I'm winning. Am I managing those three properly?
Yeah,
so probably a unique twist on you probably weren't expecting.
No, well,
that.
You know, it's funny that number 2 and 3, I completely understand and can say that I'm definitely conscientious of. But the first one there of money is something that I personally need to hear. That was my immediate thought there, where you started explaining it as this a moral thing. Before I went into coaching, I tried the money-driven career where it was about the money, but I didn't have anybody that was going to benefit from what I did with that money. So it didn't have any value to me to actually strive towards building it. I couldn't find that emotional connection to what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then now here I am working a job which, collegiate coaching, for anybody listening out there in Olympic sports, there's a ceiling, guys, to that job. In terms of that career, the relationship stuff, the problem solving and fixing issues and things like that is 100% a part of my day to day. But financially now, between myself and my wife, we have this understanding where those three things that you talked about there of spending it, of saving it, and of being able to provide it and help others with it too, is a huge part of what we do. And so that for me is just wonderful to hear. And I think I'm glad you shared it, because I guarantee you there's people hearing that have maybe had this stigma when it comes to the discussion of money, and understanding that you can put the definition on what that money actually means.
Right. What's so interesting is that, many of us, we've seen it from different angles. We've seen money be abused, right? We've seen, so we have these different, ways we look at it. And, when I study ultra performers, I look for men and women in sport and business, and I look for common denominators. Right? That's what I want. I don't want one-offs. I want, hey, is there a principle here? Like, is there foundational work here? And, the couple things I found is many of them are avid readers, right? Readers are leaders. That's the old cliche. Many of them have a morning routine or an evening. They have some type of routine they do. Most of them are early birds.
Right.
And then a lot of them win with money. And I didn't understand that till they unpacked it, but there's really three things you can do with it. And they had a healthy gauge on all three. And so as a leader, as a value-driven professional in my career, well, I want to do that well.
Sure.
Right. I want to have see that fruit come in my life, in margin and relational peace and things like that. And so I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked, because Steve, it can kind of be weird to talk about.
Sure.
I can kind of have a creepy feeling to it, and I just want to bring it to the table saying, guys, money's amoral. It doesn't have any feelings. You get to direct where you put it. So I think there's some healthy conscientious behind that.
Yeah, very much so. And it's funny. This is one of my favorite things about this podcast and being the host of it, is that I get challenged enough by guests sometimes where I'm so busy thinking about the many, many things that you're putting on the table here that I'm forgetting that I'm actually still running a show here, and I'm trying to keep the conversation going. I've got all these different thoughts going on, man. And you're challenging me, and I love it. And again, it's when I first set out on this journey with this show almost 3 years ago, like, these were the conversations that I was seeking, and I am Johnny, I'm just so appreciative for this opportunity to speak with you, to learn from you. I know there's going to be listeners everywhere making notes at the same speed that I was making notes while we were talking. And before I let you go, please let people know where they can find out more about your journey, about your services, just everything.
Absolutely. So I'm on all the social media platforms, same username. It's at JohnnyQuinnUSA.com. Would love to connect with you on your favorite social media platform, at JohnnyQuinnUSA.com. And then my website is johnnyquinnusa.com. So a lot of consistency there. If you've enjoyed, the content that Steve and I have shared and kind of maybe how I unpack some things, I write quite a few articles. And so if you literally go to johnnyquinnusa.com and click articles in the top right-hand corner where everybody's menu is on a website, you can read through. I've written down my morning routine. I've written down my evening routine. I've written down what I eat for breakfast. I've written down some of the technology that I use to maximize time. And so I've got all that in an easy to read format. It's all free. But if you like to dig deeper, and I call it how to think like an Olympian, I've got all that written down, johnnyquinnusa.com, and just click on articles and you'll have fun there.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. I encourage everybody to go check it out. I've certainly perused it a little bit myself and intend to dig a little deeper into it too. Johnny, one of my long-term goals is to take this show on the road, and I pray that one day we can do this in person. It would just be an absolute riot, maybe before an audience of 25,000 people, something like that. But that would be wonderful. But I thank you so much for your time. This has been such a pleasure, and just great luck with everything and going into this year, okay, man?
Steve, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I'll see you in person soon, hopefully.
Absolutely. And my thanks again to Johnny for joining us on the show today. I told you it would be worth your listening. And wow. Just some fantastic stuff courtesy of Johnny there. Just breaking it all down. I think it's actually the interview itself is going to provide so much food for thought for you guys. So I'm going to take that interview and I'm going to condense it down into 3 bullet points that I think speak exactly about what it is that I personally took from it. Firstly, can you recover from a failure? Secondly, are you available for unexpected opportunity? And finally, do you have a what's next attitude? These 3 things for me truly summarize everything that was fantastic about this discussion. And in relation to pulling any more points away from this particular episode, I'm going to leave it to you guys to do that on your own, because I think there was just so much fantastic content here that if I was to try and make this too specific, I would be doing a disservice to the potential of the amount of content that you could take away from our discussion here with Johnny today. So again, I'm just so appreciative of his time. I'm obviously, as always, so thankful that you would take the time to listen to this particular episode of the Career Competitor Podcast. In the meantime, how about you go ahead into your next work week thinking on these 3 things that I just listed there: recovering from failure, being available for unexpected opportunity, having a what's next attitude. What a fantastic way to maybe approach your next work week that's coming up, your next work day, maybe just the next hour of your day. Maybe you're listening to this during your lunch break and it's time to take on the second half of the day with a new open mind towards these sort of things. I encourage you all to try and apply, give some of this stuff the opportunity, the time it deserves within your career. And again, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, career_competitor. Make sure you subscribe to the show while you're listening to me right now. Make sure you're leaving us a rating. And in the meantime, guys, best of luck with everything you've got going on within your world, within your career. And I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. Bye for now.